committee. I will start with the normal items at the top of the agenda. So are there any appeals against refusal of inspection of documents, please?
No appeals, Chair.
Is there any exempt information?
There's no exempt information on the agenda.
Are there any late items?
No late items today.
Thank you. I looked at board for any declarations of interest and I don't see any. Apologies, please.
We've received apologies from Councillor Jenkins.
Great, thanks, Andy. The minutes of the last meeting back in February, is everybody happy with that? I'm looking around the board and I see everybody is happy. So we move on to the code of conduct item, and who would like to introduce this, please?
That's me, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. You'll recall that a full council adopted the Local Government Association model of code of conduct in March last year, and it took effect from the 20th of May. At that time, it was considered that there were considerable benefits in the council adopting the model code in order that the council could play its part in achieving consistency of standards across the country. Since then, the LGA has made further amendments to the model code in order to add further clarification to it. And those amendments fall into three categories. They are those to insert missing text, those required to add clarity to the executive arrangement section, and also those required to reflect guidance on other registrable interests. This report proposes that those amendments are incorporated into our code of conduct. In addition, since its adoption, a review of the application of the new code has been completed, and that concluded that some unintended consequences had arisen from the code in respect of some situations, meaning that members were prohibited from being able to take part in some decision making. And the review led to two sets of proposed amendments to the code. The first set was considered and recommended for approval by Standards and Conduct Committee, and they are those set out in red in Appendix 1 to the report. And they relate to the disapplication of the requirement for members to disclose other registrable interests, where those interests are ones which relate to a body of which the councillor is a member or is in a position of general control or management, and which they were nominated or appointed by this council. The second set, which were identified following the Standards and Conduct Committee meeting in March, relate to members' other registrable interests that are not associated with their nomination by the council. In these circumstances, the proposed amendments, which I've set out in blue in the same appendix so that you can see the differences, they require a member to continue to declare their interest, but replace the current restriction on participating in decision-making on the matter with the need instead to consider whether their participation is prejudicial to the public interest. Only if the interest is considered to be prejudicial to the public interest would a member be restricted from speaking and voting on the matter. Even in those circumstances, that issue and that prejudicial test is going to be disapplied in respect of grant applications from community groups where the purpose of the grant is the provision of activities or facilities for local community benefit. In those circumstances, members are not required to disclose their interest, and that's set out in footnote 1 to paragraph 8 in the appendix. Altogether, the proposed amendments add more clarity to the code and are less restrictive in respect of declaring interests, and will maximise member participation in matters for which they do not have a pecuniary interest. The amendments still require the consideration of whether a member's participation in a matter is prejudicial to the public interest, and therefore they retain sufficient control over potential conflicts of interest. Group leaders have been consulted on these proposals and are in unanimous support of them. So on that basis, committee is asked to consider all proposed amendments and recommend that full council adopts them. A clean copy of the impact of those amendments is set out at Appendix 2 to the report for members. Training on the code is being held for new members on Friday, but we do intend to send existing members a briefing note on the impact of the changes, and this will include a helpful flow chart in respect of when and how to declare interests. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and please, that advice is going to be given to members. Are there any questions from the committee? I don't see any questions. I'll just add the comment that in terms of looking at these revisions, as Nicole mentioned, group leaders have been consulted. I feel that we do take community committees very seriously here in Leeds. It's something that every council sets itself up differently, and it's something we we take great pride in our members being involved in making decisions at that level, and I think this is a common sense. It is stepping away from the LJ recommendations, but in terms of how we operate in Leeds, I think it is a common sense approach, and obviously that advice to members is really important. So with that, I'm going to look at the recommendations on page 8, and I take it everybody is happy with those. Thank you. Can we then move on to the next item, which is amendments to Article 15 of the Constitution, please?
Thank you, Chair. That's me again. So this report follows a review of the operation of the Constitution, and it recommends an amendment to the monitoring officer delegations to ensure that the aims and principles of the Constitution are given full effect. The proposals recommend granting the monitoring officer further authority to make changes to any part of the Constitution to those already permitted by Article 15.2.3. That article authorises a monitoring officer to make changes to any part of the Constitution which are required, 1, as a result of legislative change or decisions of the Council or Executive to enable them to maintain the Constitution to be up to date, or for the purposes of clarification only, so they are quite narrow. In all other circumstances, changes can only be approved by full council after consideration of the proposal by this committee and following advice from the monitoring officer. Therefore, this committee and full council are required to consider changes to the Constitution which are considered to be de minimis and are administrative in nature. This is not considered to be an efficient way of working and can be very resource intensive for both officers and members, as well as costly to the council. The recommendations therefore propose that the monitoring officer is authorised to make changes to the Constitution where she is of the opinion that such changes are de minimis and are required for administrative or updating purposes only, and for which there is unanimous agreement between the leader of each political group. The proposed amendments are set out in Appendix A to the report, and again, they show distract changes so you can see what they are, and all group leaders are in agreement with them. Again, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Harrand, please.
Would this committee be told after the event? It would be a quarterly summary of what decisions have been made, something like that. I'm not saying to question it or to second guess it, but to be told what's happened.
If that's something that the committee requests, then we can certainly monitor that and bring it back as a regular report each time the committee meets.
I'm happy with that as a recommendation to be added to Appendix A in terms of the way forward. So with that, is everybody on the committee happy? Great. We'll move on to the last item, which is the independent person. Andy, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly from me, this report considers 2 matters. One is the extension of Mr. Tollefson's term of office with us as independent person, which expires in July 2022 currently. And it also seeks committee's agreement to the appointment of a second independent person. Leeds, when we've done an analysis of other core cities and near neighbours, we only have 1 independent person, whereas others have more than that. And I think just from a risk management point of view, it'd be worthwhile as having an additional IP. In the report, we do say there are no resource implications, and there aren't, strictly speaking, but just to reaffirm to members, the payment for the independent person is just a little bit under £3,000 per annum, and that amount, particularly for the second IP, is covered in the members' allowance scheme already. It's costed in there, so there are no additional resource implications to the authority arising from that proposal.
Thank you, Andy. And there's going to be a slight amendment to the recommendation A, that Mr. Tollefson's appointment is extended by 2 years, and then with an option, should everybody be happy to extend it for a further 2 years. So I will just put that amended recommendation A forward and seek any comments from the committee. I don't see any comments, so we'll move to the recommendations on page 45, and I take it everybody's happy with those. That's great, thank you, and I will close the meeting. Thank you.